Hey, it's Michael Douglas. Welcome back to another episode of Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And on this edition, it's another musical musing about Elton John. Now, my last episode, the one I just did before this current episode, talked about Elton John's pending re-release of his smash album, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. But today's episode is being filmed on the 6th of September 2025. And on this day, 28 years ago, in 1997, Elton John performed his unforgettable Princess Diana tribute. And a lot of what people don't know is that this later would cause him a lot of self-reflection at the least, and at the other end of the spectrum, a source of internal turmoil, almost kind of leading him to think that he regretted doing it in the first place. On September 6, 1997, the whole world seemingly gathered together to grieve the sudden loss of the tragic death of Princess Diana, and Elton John was there to provide the musical tribute. The service took place at London's Westminster Abbey. There were about 2,000 people in attendance in the church and about 2 billion people watching via TV worldwide. It makes you think about, in the age of streaming now, what that number would have been. Completely staggering, I'm sure. But what a lot of people don't know is that on the surface, this very selfless act of tribute would prove to be very divisive in Elton John's mind. On the one hand, his musical ode to the late princess broke chart records, record sales, raised millions of pounds in that country for Diana, the Princess of Wales Memorial Fund, and became one of Elton John's most widely seen moments in his career. But too much of anything can turn sour, and not long after Elton John's funeral performance and subsequent single release of the tribute to Princess Diana, the singer realized the song was expanding into something he, quote, didn't think Diana would have wanted. Of course, news of Princess Diana's death sent shockwaves around the global community. Her reputation superseded that of the royal family, and even those who weren't royalists loved her down-to-earth attitude, her philanthropy, her influential style, and the way she was raising her 2 young sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, decades before all the drama with them. And when she died at the age of 36, the entire world grieved as thousands of mourners flocked to St. James's Place to sign the Book of Condolences. Many of them began writing excerpts from Elton John's Candle in the Wind, a song he and Bernie Taupin wrote about Marilyn Monroe, another beloved and at times divisive figure gone too soon. The billionaire media mogul Richard Branson called Elton John to tell him about his song becoming a de facto anthem for the public's mourning process over Princess Diana. Branson asked Elton John if he would rewrite the lyrics to be about the late princess and to perform it at her funeral on this date, September 6, 1997. Elton John was nervous about it, but he agreed, but only because he believed the Spencer family was the one who told Branson to reach out. John didn't want people to think he was capitalizing on the death of Princess Diana, although at least one other artist was brave enough, if that's what you want to call it, or had the audacity to accuse him of doing that anyway, and that was Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. Elton John wrote about this in his autobiography entitled Me. I don't remember much about the performance itself, but I do remember the applause afterwards. It seemed to start outside Westminster Abbey and sweep into the church itself, which I guess meant that Diana's family had achieved their aim in getting me to sing. It connected with the people outside. Elton John's relationship to Princess Diana was complicated at the time of her death. The pair were friends for years, but a professional falling out caused the two to lose touch. The princess had agreed to write a foreword for a book the late Gianni Versace was releasing, but pulled out at the last minute, claiming she didn't know the contents of the book would be so homoerotic. Elton John pushed back on her decision, challenging her to admit that the royal family had forced her to renege on her offer. She responded pretty coldly, and this is according to Elton John in his autobiography. And it wasn't until Versace's death in July of that year, 1997, that the pair reconnected. Sales of Elton John's musical tribute to Princess Diana were astounding, of course, to say the least. In this country, the single sold more than 11 million copies. Candle in the Wind broke chart records. It raised millions of pounds for, as I said, memorial funds for the late princess, and people began requesting Elton John to play Diana's version of the song in concert. In the end, it reached a point where I started feeling really uncomfortable with the charity single's longevity. Its success meant that there was footage of Diana's funeral week after week on Top of the Pops. It felt as if people were somehow wallowing in her death, like the mourning for her had gotten out of hand. It seemed unhealthy to me, morbid and unnatural. I really didn't think it was what Diana would have wanted. It was getting ridiculous. And I didn't want to do anything to prolong it any further. And since then, Elton John has refused to play Princess Diana's version of Candle in the Wind at his concerts. The only time he publicly revisits the death of the late princess for any reason is if her surviving sons were basically to ask him to do so. Pretty interesting. And again, Elton John's upcoming release of his famed Captain Fantastic album 50 years later got me to thinking about this. And the announcement just so came within the week of this 28th anniversary of his classic performance of this track at Princess Diana's funeral. I'm Michael Douglas. If you like what you see here on the channel, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And as the late, great Barry White always used to say, let the music play. And I'll see you on the next episode.